Hi everyone, this is your test review for Mr. Swenson, myself, Ms. Murdoch's classes for your exam tomorrow. I'll give you an email address if you have any questions about what to do. Just study, and again, if you have any questions, make sure you email us. Alright, so this first question is, okay, sorry, a little technical difficulty there. 4x squared minus 100 equals 0. Okay, so our first step, and I actually think it's important, you have to see if there's a greatest common factor somewhere here. So I'm going to look, oh, I realize there's a greatest common factor. Our greatest common factor is actually 4. So with that being said, I'm going to divide by 4. Okay, I'm going to take out what I see, so I have x squared minus 100, and I have my equal 0. Then I'm going to keep going. I'm going to get rid of this 4, so again I divide by the 4. Divide the 4 on both sides. I'm going to get x squared minus 100 equals 0. What do I realize? I realize that x squared and 100 are perfect squares. So I know in order to get x squared and 100, I have to have my plus 5, and I have to have my minus 5. And again, we realize it equals 0. Okay? And again, just to go back up, 0 divided by 4 is 0. Okay? I'm here. I split up my two equations. My first one is going to be x plus 5 equals 0. My second one is going to be x minus 5 equals 0. When I do the work, minus 5, minus 5. On this first side, I'm going to get x equals negative 5. Second side, plus 5, plus 5. I'm going to get x equals 5. Okay, so I have a 5 and a minus 5. If I look at my work, my answer is going to be choice 3. Oh, choice 3. Okay. Again, if I went too fast or you guys struggled, you can always rewind the video. Okay, so again, if I went too fast or you feel like you struggled, you can always rewind the video. So again, my first step again was my greatest common factor, and I found out my GCF was 4. Okay, always get into the habit of looking for your GCF first. Okay. Question 2. What are the roots of the equation x squared plus 4x minus 16 equals 0? So, what I'm going to use, and what you guys can always use for these questions, is the quadratic formula. Okay, so this quadratic formula is going to be, actually, I'm going to start off with the first part of this formula, which is x equals. Do not forget the x equals. Okay, negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac, all that over 2a. Okay, so looking back at my question, I'm going to figure out what my a is, what my b is, and what my c is. Okay, I have to figure all that out. What a, what b, and what c is. Okay, I look at the question. I know there's a 1 here, so my a is going to be 1. The b is always the number, so it's going to be 4. And the c, I'm looking right here, is going to be negative 16. And all I'm simply going to do is just plug everything in with those numbers. So, x equals negative. Instead of b, I'm going to put 4. Plus or minus square root. And again, instead of b, I'm going to put parentheses 4 square. I'll write that in red so we can actually see that. Parentheses 4 square minus 4. Instead of a, I'm going to put what a is, which is 1. And I'm going to put what c is, which is negative 16. All that over 2 times 1. Okay. So x equals, I have my negative parentheses 4. It comes out to just be negative 4 plus or minus. Now Mr. Swenson talked about putting this in the calculator. I agree with him. Put it in your calculator. So I'm going to turn it on. I'm not going to put the radical, just simply 4 4 square minus 4 parentheses 1, close parentheses, open parentheses again, negative 16. And I should have my answer being 80. So, radical 80 divided by, and 2 and 1 is simply 2. Okay. Now, to solve for radical 80, I'm going to bring my x equals negative 4, a plus or minus. With the radical 80, remember, we have to find perfect squares. So they have to go into these numbers, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, okay? We can go ahead and eliminate 64 because 64 is not going to go into 80, okay? Now, how do I do that? I have my 80. I'm going to start dividing my perfect squares. So I'll do the first one, which is 80 divided by 4. Okay, that could work. Let's try some others. 80 divided by 9. That's not going to work. It's a decimal. Let's try another one. 80 divided by 16. Okay, perfect. I found higher numbers. Okay, so I can use 4 and 20, but I can also use radical 16 times radical 5. Okay, those are higher numbers. Again, you could use 4 and 20, but you'd have to break the 4 down, the 20 down again, excuse me. So I now know I'm going to have, I don't know where that came from, sorry about that, x equals negative 4. The square root of 16 is going to be 4. And then I just simply bring down a radical 5. And then remember, I have all that, don't forget the 2 right here, dividing that by 2. Now I'm simply going to simplify. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. 4 divided by 2, and then we'll plus or minus. 4 divided by 2 is 2. You cannot divide this. You cannot divide that. Don't even think about it. Just simply bring the radical 5. Okay? And I think I have my answer. My answer choice is going to be 2. Okay? Again, the only problem with this question is a pretty long question, but it's an easy question to do if you just use the formula. Okay, and again, if you struggle, rewind the video. Okay. Question number 3. Which equation has the same solution? So this is a completing the square question, okay? Complete the square. I'll explain how to do it again. So, we're going to take the question. X squared plus 6x minus 7 equals 0. This is the only equation where you do not have to make it equal to 0. So I'm going to take the 7, since it's minus 7. I'm going to move it to the other side by adding 7. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do it to the other side. Please remember that rule. So now I have x squared plus 6x. That cancels out. Equals 7. Now I'm going to complete the square. How do I complete the square? Remember, the formula is b divided by 2 squared. Okay, b divided by 2 squared. So my b in this question is 6. So I'm going to be 6 divided by 2. And I'm going to square that. Okay? So my 6 divided by 2 is going to be 3. Then I do 3 squared, and it gives me 9. So now I'm going to put my 9 here. And remember, whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. Okay? So, my new equation right now is going to be x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals, and I'm going to add my 7 and 9, I'm going to get 16. Okay? Now, I have to factor this out. I could do the x game, my a times c, and my b. So I could do 9, and I could do 6, and I can get my 3 and 3. Or, a little neat trick is, you can remember when you did b divided by 2, you got 3. So this is actually going to be x plus 3 squared, because you have your 2 3's here, equals 16. So you just took this equation and wrote it and completed the square, and your answer is going to be 4. Okay. Again, if you're struggling, I spoke too fast, I moved too fast, just simply rewind the video. Okay, now these questions are a little bit more tougher, so I might take a little bit more time explaining this to you. So just understand the question. So the function h of t equals negative 16 t squared plus 144 represents the height ht in feet of an object from the ground at t seconds after it drops. A realistic domain for this function is. So we're talking about something dropping from the ground. So let's look at a realistic domain. Anytime you have h of t, you can simply just press y equals. Okay. Simply press y equals. Okay. So I can look at the question, put the domain function in me. So I can put negative 16. Instead of t, I'm going to put x squared, right, plus 144. Look at the graph. Sorry, let's see. There you go. And this is my function. See if I can make it a little bit bigger. But the function asks for the height in feet of an object from the ground at t seconds after it is dropped. Okay. So we're looking at seconds here, guys, and we usually typically start seconds where? At 0. Okay. If this is going to be the ground for the domain, let's count. Let's see if I can make it a little bit bigger for us. I guess I can't. 1, 2, boom. So it hits the ground at 3 seconds. So a realistic domain for this question is 2. Why? Because we start at 0. Okay? When we talk about things in height and feet and it reaches the ground, we're talking about when it hits the ground. And in this case, it hits the ground at the x-axis. So your simple answer to that question is 2. Only thing we did for this question was we just plugged it into the calculator. We plugged the function into the calculator to see where it hit the ground. Okay? Question 5. Which quadratic function has the largest maximum? So we have to remember something we're looking at quadratic. We have this, and we have this. Okay. If you remember, we're looking at the vertex. There's a vertex there and a vertex here. This vertex is not the max, it's the minimum. This is your maximum. So we're only looking for graphs that kind of curve up and then down like a roller coaster. So this would be something we're looking at, and then we have to check and make sure these other functions are like that. So let's take a look. Again, we're going to use our calculator. Again, guys, tomorrow's exam, please have a calculator. Okay, we're going to do parentheses. 3 minus x. Minus x, close parentheses, parentheses again, 2 plus x. And we're going to press graph. So we have a function. I'm going to look at my function now. I'm going to look for that vertex. So I'm going to press second table. I'm going to look for my vertex. We kind of talked about it yesterday. I mean, that's talked a couple days ago. It's kind of at that point where it kind of curves and it turns. So I look at the graph, it turns about here. See what number that is. So I can check the table. 0.46640. So it turns right between 6. So I know that vertex is going to be around, let's say, somewhere in between 6. Maybe 7, right? Let's say it's about, let's say 7, okay? let's say around 7, because it kind of turns back around, right? Let's try choice 2. If I look, it's right about here. And again, it goes from -3. So let's use this graph just to show you something. -3 is right about here. Let's see, -1, -3. It goes to 0, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then it goes 1, 9. So it kind of goes up here. 5, let's pretend. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Kind of goes here. Then it goes 2, 9. And then it goes back down. So it kind of goes like this. And it curves up like that, and it comes back down, right? So that already looks like it's a big one. But let's continue looking. Choice 3. Choice 3, plug it in the graph, y equals -5, outside for -5x squared minus 12x plus 4. Look at our graph. Okay, let's take a look. Second table. It went -5, then 8, then 11, then it went back down to 4. So let's see if we can actually change the table set to see, not the table, let's see if we can change the table set and see if we can see where it actually is. Let's try 0.5 instead. Try table. So it goes 8, it goes 10.5, then it goes to 11, and then it comes back down. So let's say it's right around 11 for this one. Right? We got about 7 here, got about 11 there. We did that one, that didn't work. And if we look here, our vertex is 1, 2, 2.5, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's not 4. In this case, we kind of did it not 7. So our answer choice is going to be 3, which is right around 11. Okay. And again, we're looking for the largest maximum. So we want to see what's the highest point is going. Okay. All right, question number 6. It says, let f be the function represented by the graph below. Let g be a function such that g of f equals -1/2 x squared plus 4x plus 3. Determine which function has the largest maximum value. Justify your answer. So here's where you have to be careful in terms of justifying your answer, okay? So when you look at the question, what we're going to do is looking at our maximum value. So in this case, we're going to look at this value right here. That is going to be your max. If I count on the graph, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to be 1, 6. Okay. So I'm looking at my maximum value. So here, we can actually use the calculator for this question. However, this is justify your answer. So if we're justifying your answer, you actually have to do some work here. So how do we find the vertex? Well, we have this formula we talked to you about, which is the axis of symmetry. What the axis of symmetry will do is it will find you the x value. Okay. So I'm going to look at my equation. I got to find what b is, and I got to find what a is. Okay. In this case, a is going to be -1/2. B is going to be 4. So I'm going to plug it all in the calculator. So I'm going to do x equals negative. Instead of b, I'm going to put what b is, which is 4, divided by 2, parentheses, -1/2. Okay? So in this case, I have negative 4 divided by, just so we know how to do this in the calculator. 2, I can actually do parentheses, negative 1 half, in case you struggle with fractions. That is going to be negative 1. Negative 4 over negative 1, I'm not going to get x equals 4. Okay, I got x equals 4. I'm going to take my value of x, which is 4, and plug it in anywhere I see x. So I'm going to write this question. So it's going to be g of x equals 1 half, negative 1 half. Instead of x, I'm going to put 4 squared. Plus 4 times 4, and I believe it's plus 3. Okay. Confirm that, okay. So, do I do multiplication first, or do I do exponents first? Let's be clear on something. You always do exponents first. So 4 squared is 16. Okay. Negative half of 16 is negative 8. Okay. Plus 4 squared is 16. Then I have my plus 3. Okay, so negative 8 plus 16 is 8. 8 plus 3 is 11. So I know g of x equals 11. That's 11. In this equation, f of x was 6. So which one is greater? One is 6, one is 11. I know my 11 is greater, so g of x is greater. And just to be clear what it says, the question asks you which one has the largest maximum value and has largest max value. Okay? Okay. If you struggle, rewind back. Okay? If you have a question, concern, at the end I'm going to give you all our email addresses so you can email us. All right. Question number 3. Write an equation that defines m of x as a trinomial where m of x equals 3x minus 1, 3 minus x plus 4x squared minus 19. I'm actually going to multiply all this first. Okay. So my first step, we're going to multiply. I'll do this times this, which is going to give me 9x. I'm going to do that same one times this, which is going to give me 3x squared. I'm going to do the negative 1 times the 3, which gives me negative 3. And then I'm going to take the negative 1 times the negative x, it's going to give me positive x. Then I have a plus 4x squared plus 19. Okay. Now I'm going to do some combining. I'm going to box them so you can see what I can combine this. I can combine the 9x with, let's see, with x. 9x and x is 10x. Okay. I can combine this with this. Oh, actually, am I doing it wrong? Okay. I could combine that with that. I can get plus 7x squared. I can then combine, let me see, yep. Oh, is this something wrong? I know there's something wrong. Something look funny. Alright, so this actually is not plus 3x squared. This is actually minus 3x squared. That times the negative x is minus 3x squared. So I'm going to go back. Sorry about that. Got to call my mistake before I taught you something wrong. So now this is negative 3x and 4x, and that is going to be 1x squared. Or just plus x squared. And guys, when you make a mistake, what you should always do is go back and check. So that times that gives me 9x, okay. That times that is negative 3x squared, okay. That times that is negative 3. and a negative is a positive. Okay, good. I just want to make sure because, again, when you make a mistake, it happens. Mistakes happen all the time. Just make sure that when you make a mistake, you go back and check everything. Okay. Last one I'm going to combine. I'm going to combine -3 and 19. So -3 and plus 19 is going to be positive 16. Okay. So I'm going to rewrite this properly. So this is going to be x squared plus 10x plus 16. Boom. There you go. Okay. Again, something doesn't look right, go back and check. Okay, so I just solved the first question. The second part of the question says solve for x when m of x equals 0. So I'm going to take this whole equation, and where it says m of x, I'm going to make it equal to 0. Okay. A couple methods work here. I can always use quadratic formula. It always works. Time purposes, I'm going to go ahead and use factoring. I think factoring works here. Do my xing. A times C, B, A times C, so that's 1 times 16 is 16, 10, two numbers that multiply to add give me 10, I have 8 and 2. So x squared plus 2x plus 8x plus 16. Remember, it's all equals 0. Greatest common factor here is going to be x, and I'm left with x plus 2. Greatest common factor is going to be 8, and I'm left with x plus 2. And again, how did I get that? I divided this by 8 and 8. I divided this by x and x. I have my two equations. I'm going to have x plus 8, and I'm going to have x plus 2, and I know they all equal 0. Okay? So, separate them. The first one's going to be x plus 8 equals 0. The second one's going to be x plus 2 equals 0. X equals -8. And x equals -2. Okay, so those are going to be my answers. -8 and -2. Okay, so my first answer was this. My equation. My second answer was the second. Okay, and again, simply what I did was just multiply and add them together. If you struggle, again, I said it like 6 times, rewind the video. Oh, this is a tough one. A landscaper create a rectangular flower bed such that the width is half of the length. Area of the flower bed is 34 square feet. Write and solve an equation to determine the width of the flower bed to the nearest tenth of a foot. All right, so I have a rectangular flower bed. Okay? So, looking at the area of the flower bed, I know the area equals 34. So I know this is an area question because we talked about it. It's the area. So I know my area formula has to be the length times the width. Let's continue reading the question. And again, we drew a diagram. It's important to draw a diagram. It says the width is half of the length. So I know that the width is half the length. Okay? And we don't know the length. So I have my length, and I know the width is half of it. Okay? So I'm going to set up an equation. Area equals length times width. And again, my area is 34, so it's going to be 34 equals the length times, and again, let's work on this. Half the length, L's on top. This is going to be L divided by 2. Okay? So, and again, that turns into L. That's why it's L divided by 2. I'm going to keep going. 34 equals, at the length twice, so it's going to be L squared divided by 2. Okay? I want to get L by itself. So my first goal is to get rid of this divided by 2. I have to do the inverse. So the inverse of dividing by 2 is multiplying by 2. That way I cancel that 2 and I cancel that 2 out. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other side. So I'm going to have 34 times 2, which is going to be 68. So So now I'm going to have 68 equals L squared. And guys, just to clarify what I did, I turned 1/2 L into L divided by 2, because that's what that is, okay? Now I want to get rid of this little thing right here. In order to get rid of that, we talked about this in class, we have to do the square root. So we do the square root. So now I have square root of 68 equals L. But I have to be careful here because the question wants me to write and solve an equation to determine the width of the flower bed to the nearest tenth of a foot. It doesn't say radical form. So when it doesn't say radical form, I actually have to find the square root of 68. Okay, so let's do the square root of 68. So this is the only time where you're going to be allowed to do the kind of square root of 68. So I'm going to press my second button. I'm going to press, where's my square root button? Right there. Square root of 68 is going to be, so now I know my length is 8.24. Okay, and it's the nearest tenth. So if I say nearest tenth, the tenth is 2. I'm looking at the 4. The 4 goes down, so it's simply going to be 8.2. Boom, I found the length, but here's the problem. I'm not asking for the length. It wants to know the width. And remember, the formula for the width is half of the length. Okay, we talked about it. It's half the length. So if the width is half the length, and my length is 8.2, I'm going to simply replace the L with 8.2. Half of 8.2, or 8.2 divided by 2, .4. So the width is 4.1. Okay. I'll come back to number 9. I'll actually do number 9 last. That's a long question. And actually for number 9, what I'll do is I'll actually show you the work that you have to do because I don't want this video to run a little longer, okay? So the graph of the function f of x equals absolute value x minus 3, absolute value plus 1, and g of x equals 2x plus 1 are drawn. What's the thing about these functions are true? The good thing about these, you know these things are functions. So what you can do is plug them in your calculator. So again, go to y equals absolute value. If you're still struggling with that math, go over. Oh, right here, boom, it says numbers, absolute value. You're going to press 1. Some calculators are going to show, some calculators are not. They're going to simply say ABS. So x minus 3, come out of it, plus 1. Then my second equation is going to be 2x plus 1. I'm going to press second. I'm going to press table. Now I'm going to compare the answers. Let's see what it says. It says the solution to f of x and g of x is 3. Is the solution 3? Well, I'm at 3 on the x-axis, and one solution is 1, the other solution is 7. So that is not my answer. Choice 2, solution is 1. Let's go to 1. When x is 1, y is 3, both y's are 3, so this is your answer. Okay. To confirm that, just so you're clear, press graph. Look at the graph. That's one graph. This is the other graph, and they intersect right at that point right there, okay? Okay. Last question. I got question 9. I'm going to actually show you the work, and then I'm going to kind of model it as well. So it wants to know, New Cannon Park is undergoing renovations to its garden. One garden that was originally a square is being adjusted so that one side is double the length. So I know one side is a square, while the other side decreased by 3 meters. So I have a square, okay? And again, I'll show you what it looks like, done already. Okay, so this is the old. Okay, you know what a square, all the sides are equal. Correct? It's being adjusted. So one side is double the length while the other side decreases by 3 meters. So, in this same square, one is double the length. So if the length is s, double the length is going to be 2s. The other side is going to decrease by 3 meters, so it's going to be minus 3. Okay. So what you see in this work right here is the old one and then the new one where one side doubles and one side decreases by s. Okay. Now keep going. The rectangular garden will have an area that is 25% more than the original square garden. Write an equation that can be used to determine the length of the sides of the original square. So in this diagram you see, I'll make it bigger for you so you can see it. One says old, one says new. So the old one has the two squares. The new one reflects the minus 3, the 2 times, and understanding and realizing that, remember, the square is being increased by 25%, so it's 1.25. Because you're taking the old square and then you're increasing it by 0.25. So if we talked about before, this whole idea of increasing and decreasing, so this is going to be 1 plus 0.25. Okay? Why? Because I turn this percent into a decimal, it's going to be 0.25. So, in expressing that, this is actually going to be my equation, right? This first equation. 2s times s minus 3 equals 1.25s squared. How do you model it? It's simple. You said the length of the square is double, the width of the square is reduced by 3, the area of the square is multiplied by 1.25. So you're kind of just modeling what you just drew. Okay? Next thing you're going to determine the area, and this is actually what the work implies. So you're going to do 2s times s minus 3. You're going to get 2s squared minus 6x, because again 2s times s is 2s squared. 2x is minus 6s equals 1.25s squared. Then we move everything over. So what they did here, because these two are the same, they minus this to the other side. They got 0.75s squared equals 6s. Okay? Because he moves the 6s to the other side. We go from 6s to 6, because what do? We divide it by s. Okay? We divide it by s, and we get s equals 8 meters. Okay? So what we simply did was we solved for s in this equation. Okay? And again, I know Mr. Swenson talked about this a little bit yesterday in some of the classes. So again, we found s by moving stuff over. Now we took what we found for s and we simply substituted, because now we want to know the area. Okay? We knew that the area was here, so what we did was replace s with 8. Same thing here. 2 times 8 is 16. 16, 8 minus 3 is 5. 16 times 5 is 80 square meters. So again, what we did here, we just kind of simply set up a diagram. Okay. Again, tough question. If you break it down step by step, you should be fine. Guys, good luck with your test tomorrow. Again, if you have any questions or concerns, please email one of us. Either here, here, or here. Yeah, you get it, blah, blah, blah. Guys, to give you some advice, email Mr. Swenson. Okay? Take care, good luck, study for your exam, okay?